This is Ree here. Thank you so much for joining me. I am recording this video on behalf of innocent lives. The world is being divided right now. Both sides are cheering for the death of the opposite side. This is an abomination to our fellow man. We must come together. Do not replace love with hate. We do not have the full picture. Remember that the narrative is given to us by the same people who plan to enslave and control us. Social media is a play. The algorithm is controlled. This is psychological warfare on the masses. War is big business. Do not forget that. That being said, I do not know what's true. I do not believe what is told to us. The media, the government has proven time and time again that it cannot be trusted. When the masses are emotional, they forget this. When ego overtakes the mind, we become a slave to our emotions and lose all critical thinking. The easiest way to control the masses is to put them in fear. It does not matter what is happening around you. There is no justification for fear or ego. There is no justification for murder otherwise in self-defense. I do not jump on trends for views, like I have seen many astrologers do. Some are treating this as if they're announcers of a sports game. This is very disappointing. I do not take sides, for I see the God in all. I also see the ego overtake some, and I also have compassion for them. I have understanding and forgiveness for them. Like I said, it's a time to come together. Do not let them divide and conquer us, for this is the strategy. Let's get into the astrology. The eclipses happened on October 14th, and all month that activated the nakshatra Chitra. Chitra, which is illusion. Ketu, being the planet of illusion, is also in Chitra. Vishwakarma, which is the creation worker, the deity that corresponds with this nakshatra, is also said to be an adept in Maya and illusion, which is the force that keeps the drama of life alive. Vishwakarma was the architect who built palaces for the Pandavas, which led to the Great Final War, commonly known as Mahabharata. The Mahabharata, also called the Kurukshetra War, was a war that was described in Hindu texts. The conflict arose between two groups of cousins, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, due to the struggle in the dynastic succession of the throne of Hastinapura in India in a kingdom called Kuru. This war lasted 18 days. 1 + 8 = 9. 9 is war. During the war, the Pandavas won the war, which they stated was a fight over land and power. There were many other reasons as well, but the ultimate winner was Dharma. The truth and the values of basic principles of life was the only true winner. Dharma wins over injustice. This is why I caution you to react in a dharmic way and not to get caught up in the illusions or ego, for no one wins in war. Israel is in Rahu Dasha in Aries in the 8th house, which is in Bharani Nakshatra, which is death, rebirth, transformation, caution, jealousy, secrecy, forbiddance, struggle, and sacrifice. It is ruled by the Lord of Death, which is the gatekeeper between two worlds, the physical and the non-physical. They entered Rahu Dasha on February 9th of this year. It will be in Rahu Dasha until October 2025. This is a very difficult dasha to be in. Rahu does not do well in the 8th house. This is the co-ruler of its ascendant and the 6th house as well, which is war and enemies. This will be a very difficult time. The dasha of Rahu will run until 2041. This is the most difficult dasha. We start to act out of ego, which can be very dangerous. Rahu denotes war and violence, attacks, overpowering enemies, invasions. And in the 8th house, it brings out occultism, black magic, curses. Mars conjunct Ketu was one of the catalysts for this to occur. This was conjunct its ascendant on October 7. Like I mentioned in my previous video, this would be a catalyst for what's to come from the eclipse in Chitra on October 14th. That eclipse was on its ascendant. This is spiritual war, like I mentioned in my previous video. If you think that wars are only fought physically or for physical means, then you are very blinded by the Maya. Jupiter is currently in Bharani Nakshatra in retrograde, which is another trigger point, for it is the lord of the 4th house, which is the motherland, and the 7th house, which is battles, open warfare, public enemies, and the death of enemies. Rahu is there as well. It's its Rahu return. Transiting Rahu is at the Gandanta point, causing major challenges in 8th house matters, like war, for example. The Mars-Ketu conjunction happened in its 2nd house, which is currently happening right now, opposing the 8th house, which is activated by this dasha. This being aspected by Jupiter is making things a lot worse and amplifying this type of energy. Saturn in the 6th house brings karma of enemies, but Saturn is strong in the 6th house, giving it the ability to fight. Mars is creating sudden deaths, violence. Ketu is sudden assassinations, persecution, imprisonment, and sudden epidemics. This is not good for families. It's not good for the economy, national wealth, banks, financial institutions are involved. This has a lot to do with money. I caution around the 17th, 18th, 19th, when Israel's ascendant lord, Mercury, will conjunct the sun, Ketu, and this can bring huge losses to the country through aggressive acts. Loss of confidence or either secret enemies can surface, and the leader should be cautious as well. This will also activate during the lunar eclipse on the 28th, and this will be conjunct its natal Ketu. This will also affect the reputation of the country, all ruling powers, and authorities. Palestine. October 7th, Venus, the lord of its 10th house of reputation and 3rd house of neighbors, was conjunct its ascendant. The eclipse happened in its 2nd house opposing its 8th house, showing us war over money in this chart as well. Saturn is in retrograde on its descendant, opposing its Leo ascendant. Saturn and the sun are enemies. This aspect is causing major problems in many people's lives. For example, Trudeau is Magha ascendant as well. We all know what's been going on with him. Palestine just started Rahu Moon Dasha on September 27th, and it will run until March 2025. This is a good example of how changing dashas, or even the sub-period of a dasha, can drastically change your life. It has been in Rahu Dasha since 2008. Before this, it was in Mars Dasha in the 8th house since 2001. Mars is also war. Before that, it was in the Moon, which is in the 6th house, which is war as well, since 1991. This is why there's been so much ongoing conflict. Its Moon is in the 6th house, which is armed forces, and Uttarashada, which is war. In the scripture, this is also represented by the Mahabharata war, like I mentioned. It too needs to be cautious around the 17th and onwards when its 10th house and 3rd house lord conjunct Ketu in the ascendant. Major losses from neighboring countries that will affect its reputation, leaders, and the country as a whole. The Sun, Ketu, Mercury conjunctions will conjunct its natal Venus, and later on the 20th, Mercury will pass the Sun, which will cause gains from other nations, affect its alliances, its national plans, and its national revenue of the country. This will be amplified by the lunar eclipse on October 28th. When Saturn stations direct on November 4th and onward until the end of the year, this will cause a battle to escalate as Saturn will amplify its direct opposition to Israel's natal Mars in the 12th house, being major death, losses, hospitalizations to itself and neighboring countries, which is Palestine. The station will be direct on Palestine's descendant, opposing Ketu, which is lost for the country. Its ascendant lord will be closely followed by Mars, which is war, and in the 3rd house, which will conjunct Mercury, which is the 2nd and the 11th house, which is meaning money and alliances, and its natal sun. Major losses from neighboring countries. Also opposing the 9th house of foreign trade could be cut off. United Nations could get involved, world organizations, international diplomacy, also the Navy and air raids. This will get worse in November as well, like I said, and will continue till at least the end of the year, possibly until the next eclipse, to the next eclipse next year. The nodes will change in November to the 2nd and the 8th house, axis for Palestine, and the 1st and the 7th for Israel. The 2nd and the 8th are very difficult. This will last a year and a half for both of them. Ketu in the 1st house will be very difficult for Israel as well, showing us major losses for the country. The US is in Rahu Dasha as well in the 8th house. I have made many references to its very difficult transits at this time, and it's Shawtee, where Saturn is currently conjunct its moon. When Saturn stations, this could be an indication of its involvement within the war. This is happening in Canada's 7th house, where Mars is currently transiting, the house where it has its natal Saturn. It's showing its involvement could happen nearing October 30th, when its Mars will make an exact conjunction with Saturn. Transiting Saturn is also opposed Canada's natal Mars, and the nodes are currently on its ascendant and descendant. Canada is also in Saturn Dasha, so these transits of Saturn will definitely be activated. No one wins is the point of this. Innocent people are the ones who lose over these senseless, egotistical clashes. It is very clear this is over money, and it is very shameful. I will update you more on this as we go, just so this video isn't too long. Thank you so much for watching. Out of respect for the severity of this broadcast, I will not be advertising. Thank you.